Well, it's 4 o'clock, so I'm going to just get started with housekeeping. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. The structure of this event will first be introductions, then a program with Valerie Baeza, and lastly, some time to take questions and comments. If you have any technical difficulties, feel free to type in your concern in the chat box there, and I'll meet you there and assist you. To ask a question or make a comment, feel free to raise your hand to be unmuted, or you can also type it in that chat box or that Q&A box you see, and we will address them at the appropriate time. Valerie Baeza is a natural storyteller. She writes fiction centered around interpersonal relationships with a unique sense of empathy for human condition. After writing fiction for herself for far too long, she has released her debut novel titled Story of My Life on October 18th of 2021. This gripping novel possesses bold characters and impassioned storylines. It's never been more thrilling to discover a diamond in the rough until now. As a member of Southwest Writers and the New Mexico Book Association, Valerie is fervent about fiction and poetry. She was selected as one of the New Mexico's best emerging poets of 2019. And as a highly sought after writer for her genuine advocacy, Valerie was the feature writer for New Mexico Film News. She lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico with her dogs, Allie and Carter, her boys. She relishes the opportunity to hit mountain trails. Please welcome Valerie Baeza and the Story of My Life.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Jessica and Santa Fe Public Library. I wanted to read from my novel for you guys, and I'm going to start by touching on chapter 1 to kind of lead you into chapter 2 so that we have a good understanding. So in chapter 1, it starts with, it's about an Englishman named Garence Leitner. He's in his early 40s. He is packing up his cottage in Bourton-on-the-Water, England. He has 3 days to pack up all of his belongings before the new homeowners move in on Monday morning. And so he's in a rush, and he has lost the love of his life. He has been depressed ever since she passed. And so this story is about, it's a love story between Garence and Sabina. His method of therapy is handwriting letters. And throughout this novel, you will see those beautifully depicted in the novel by my typesetter, Dominique Dragoon. Each main character in the novel, has their own unique typeset. So that way you truly get a feeling of what they were writing, what they were going through as all these life events are occurring. And in the present day, as Garence is packing up all of his belongings, he is writing one final letter, looking for a reason to live. So he begins. And he's English. I'm not an actor, so I will do my best. He begins. Dear unbeknown reader, if you think this is another love story about a guy falling for a girl, you are sorely mistaken. This is about everything that made my life worth living. My profound pleasure to have held 3 lovely ladies. In truth, I did fall in love, twice actually, but that's beside the point. My life was filled with perfection, followed by a series of heart-wrenching events that have made me want to take my own life. And as he's packing his belongings, you follow him on his journey. And he comes across a vintage luggage that possesses all of the handwritten letters between him and Sabina and one other woman. Here he continues. As I've said before, this is not a love story, but a collection of chapters I, Garence Leitner, will revisit. So I guess you could say these letters are the story of my life. Garence pulls the thin jute strand that bounds these letters, and he lets it fall onto the floor. He held the top letter and placed the remainder of the stack on the table, where they cascaded like dominoes. His thumb swept over her name as he recalled the trip that led to their meeting. "5 years ago, October 8th, Garence was on the prowl to rediscover a remote location in Torres del Paine National Park. It was an unmarked route, and although it had been a few years ago, he was certain he was on the right one. With his left hand gripping a canvas binder, he pulled back a branch to circumvent a rock he couldn't scale. His face brightened as his destination loomed overhead, an immense stadium of granite peaks with snow-packed crevices and scuttling rivers, cutting the emerald dune that was the Via Frances. He approached a large sloped rock that he knew was the perfect spectator's seat when his boots gripped the ground as he came to a halt. Someone was already on his rock. "Keep on walking," said the traveler. "I'm sorry, I didn't know anyone else knew about this spot." "Well, now you do." She wore rolled up shorts, worn mid-rise hiking boots, and a gray t-shirt and a wide rim-brimmed hat with a neck protector over her hair wrapped in a low bun. She seemed as determined for solitude as he was, but he wanted to behold this once-in-a-lifetime view, or in his case, twice-in-a-lifetime view. Garence rolled his eyes. He had ditched his travel guide, Marcos, and hiked 30 minutes to get to this point, so he rose onto the hard plain. "I'm afraid you're going to have to budge over. I'm doing a story on the park, so you'll have to share the view." "Oh, you're writing about Torres de Paine. Well, I should leave and allow the great writer to work. Pardon, I'm so sorry." A subtle shine in her texture of her enunciation gave way to a few astute listeners, Garence being one of them, that Spanish was her primary language. "Stop," he said, placing his hand upon hers. "You've proven your point." He glanced at her. Her left wrist showcased 4 inches of dark bracelets made of leather and hemp, and a 3-inch leather band circled the right. Her ears were pierced several times, the first being a petite plug, but now that he was more than glancing at her, he recognized the rest were leather button earrings, that she had the tiniest diamond stud in her left nostril. Sterling silver rings adorned her fingers. "You might as well paint my portrait or take a photo if you're going to keep gawking at me." His eyes rummaged the valley. "If that's what you'd like, sure." "I'm not suggesting we pose. I'm implying that you are being passive aggressive. I'm over it." He took out his camera, and then he remembered seeing her at one of the stops earlier in the day. "I'll move over." With her grayish brown eyes, she gave him a sideways glance. He accepted her awkward grin as a sign that he was on the right track. "Here, turn your upper body a bit." She obliged and removed her hat. "Now we'll get that whole view from this angle." Her sudden easiness made him chuckle, and he was glad he stayed. "Say cheese." "Queso." She laughed, and when Garence felt her lean toward him, he snapped the picture. She moved over a nudge while he unzipped his binder and scribbled in the journal. "What are you writing this time?" she asked, as if they were old friends. "This time, you've been stalking me?" "You wish. I've seen you once or twice, nose deep in your journal. Busy, busy, busy." "They're my observations and experiences. And other travelers," he replied, closing the worn journal and zipping it up. "I'm a freelance travel writer." Sabina's eyes rose from an impression that he had laid upon her. "That's an alluring profession." "It didn't start off that way," he disclosed, remembering the score of unreliable, low-paying travel assignments that hadn't even covered his upfront costs, assignments that had forced his hand to become a semi-satisfied editorial assistant at 2 publishing houses in London, where several years of financial stability were afforded. His path had been dusty, crooked, and plateaued as possible, but Garence persevered, and he rappelled into an unexpected caverns to scale 3 peaks. He fortified passing connections with editors at other houses and publications during meetings or social events, and landed advantageous opportunities. Today, 14 years later, with 38 years of life experience in his backpack, Garence had anchored his hold on the global travel writing industry. Removing himself from his memories, he understated his triumph. It didn't start out that way. Sabina identified his humility straight away and paired it with his hard-earned self-worth as a means of understanding who he was. This man who was becoming less and less of a stranger to her as the seconds ticked by, she was drawn to him. Yes, she was attracted to him. Let's get that out of the way. But in all honesty, he possessed a rugged warmth that soothed her senses like the perfect nightcap to an eventful evening. Peeking into his earth-colored eyes made Sabina forget herself. And when the corner of her mouth turned up, she blushed for the first time in her life. So, are you going to tell me who's publishing it so I can keep watch and pick up a copy? Rove magazine. She wasn't familiar with it. They're an American active lifestyle periodical based out of Colorado, and they've been a publication for 10 months. They're doing quite well. The next issue should be a special of sorts, and they want something pretty special to mark their 1-year anniversary. With the 6-page spread of the O and W circuits of the park. I've written for them before, 3 or 4 times, so it's nice to be a part of their celebration. Sabina gathered that he was very good at his job and well respected in his field, but she shelved her assessment before it marked her face. Well, it's no wonder they're a success, having you to give them flight. You don't even know me, he regaled, looking at her square. She was stunned. Garence had been forthcoming up to this point. The weight of her silence gave her more reason to reflect. She was inclined to look away, but she identified this as a challenge to let someone new in. She was never going to see him again, yet the man before her was having an influence on her, a positive one. Did she appreciate this subconscious change? Shadows had danced upon her soul for a long time. She wasn't certain she could ever let them go. If there was ever a reason to change her frequency, it was now. I'm Sabina, she said, extending her hand. Sabina Mondragon, and I'm an excellent judge of character. He swore she saw a twinkle in her eye, but he wasn't sure. Now that she had introduced herself, he couldn't say she didn't know him. She offered him a handshake to solidify their introduction. Garence Leitner. It was nice of Rove to take you out to celebrate this moment. It was. She liked his laugh and the social roller coaster ride their meeting was taking them on. Maybe next time they'll pitch in for a laptop or something, she said, dropping her eyes to his old school writing supplies. I wouldn't be opposed to it, he disclosed. But let's back up a bit. I enjoy writing by hand. I write down my thoughts before I draft a document. Sabina resituated herself on the angular rock and extended her legs. You enjoy writing by hand, she repeated as her eyes trolled the sky. As in calligraphy? Or that you like doing things more than once? You are spirited, aren't you? She covered her face with her hands and her cheeks felt hot. I didn't mean anything by it. It's all right. There's no need to blush. I don't blush, she blurted, defensive. She removed the elastic tie from her hand, then tousled it. But you are, and I'm your witness. What about yourself? What drew you to the towers? She shrugged, feeling the uncharacteristic reddening of the apples vanishing. I'm trying my hand at going with the flow. Care to elaborate? She combed through her thoughts as her fingers went through her hair. The horizon was ever changing, unsettled, cold. She smiled because despite everything, her reality would be striking. She bit her lower lip. Well, I have a world map framed over corkboard in my living room, she began, and I threw a dart at the map. It landed on Torres del Paine. Very bold. A lady cut from the same cloth as myself. Well, we remnants have to stick together, don't we? She joked, leaning toward him. It took a while, but we found each other. Garence met her lean and caught a whiff of her body lotion, hibiscus and coconut. He examined the river, then referred back to her. Why did you allow a dart to choose your holiday? Her smile had all but extinguished. I was having lunch with my mother at Mendigakoa, and I was telling her about a birthday trip my boyfriend and I were planning to Bora Bora when I realized that I didn't want to go with him. Garence's intrigue was plastered all over his face, but she went on. I wasn't madly into him, so there was no point in going anywhere with him. That sounds horrible. Yes, it does. You don't have to be polite and shake your head. She covered her face, laughing at her own embarrassment. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't want to talk about it. And right there, Garence knew there was always more to Sabina's story, but he wasn't going to let that be an excuse. Can you try? She met his eyes, and then they fell. Well, as individuals, we were strong. He's a great guy, but we weren't strong as a couple. In all honesty, we didn't complement each other's strengths and weaknesses, and I deserve to be in that kind of relationship. Anyway, I had the money saved and I still wanted to take a holiday, but I wasn't sure where to go. So I threw a dart. I think it's still fixed to the wall because I don't remember prying it off. She dismissed the distracting reflection with a wave, and the sterling silver rings caught the light. Everything happens in divine timing, so allow things to unfold. She panned the landscape. This is an unforeseen adventure. I can't believe I'm here. You created it. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Where are you from? He asked, enamored and wanting to know everything about her. Bilbao. I teach English. That's brilliant. And Bilbao is gorgeous. And yourself? She asked, feeling as though she should have already covered this ground. London. I like your bracelets, he commented, his fingertips touching the wrist nearest him. Thanks, she replied, avoiding his eyes. He wasn't sure if she put him off by touching her, because it couldn't have been his complimenting her bohemian indulgences. Are you okay? Yep. His eyes narrowed. You can talk to me. I know we just met, but I'm a brilliant soundboard. Gracias. You can drop it now. Fair enough, he said with resolution. He had traveled the world and encountered all kinds of personalities and conversations. So he switched gears. When is your birthday? In 3 days. I'll be 33, she said, warming up to him again. I look forward to each birthday. So this one won't be contaminated. Did you catch the repeated threes? Garence leaned back against his hands. 33 and 3? Now I do. Are you interested in numerology? A bit, she disclosed, grinning. Pleased that her mood had lifted, he nodded as if he had figured her out. Tell me, what do repeated threes mean? That the divine is supporting all that you aspire? All that I aspire? Is that a fact? That, my friend, remains to be seen. Well, let's start at the beginning. So that covers the threes. What about all the other numbers? Let's start at the beginning. Sabina leaned back against the palms of her hands to get comfortable, and her hair fell over her shoulder and she tilted her head. I'll give you the high-level rundown. All right. First off, 1 is a sacred number. So when you see it repeated in a 3-digit pattern, as in 111, know that it holds the vibration for new beginnings. 222 is for matters of the heart. 333 vibrates manifestation and the exploration of our potential. With 444, the universe is supporting your hopes and dreams. She sat straighter. 555 is for letting go of what no longer serves you and being open to change. 666 holds a vibration of fear, so you'll need to step out of whatever you're afraid of and zero in on the beauty that is possible. So the infamous 666 is not so evil after all. With a dip of her chin, she said, no, it's not. 777 represents your intuition, 888 speaks to your growth, and with 999, you're being reminded to clear your mind. And where would I see these patterns, especially the higher numbers? Oof, everywhere. The time and the date are big ones. You can also see repeated numbers in a telephone number, flight number, odometer, stats, page number, weight. The possibilities are endless. What happens when I recognize a pattern? What am I supposed to do? If you ever see these patterns, take count of what is going through your mind and listen to the message that is sent to you. There's no reason to overcomplicate things. Got it. Do you? She asked with a measured amount of amusement and skepticism. She watched him absorb what he had learned. His eyes had a far-off appearance as he recalled each pattern. For the most part, he admitted. Anything else I should know? She collected her thoughts. Just 1111. It's the most powerful of all the patterns. Why is that? We're all co-creators of our own reality, right? Of course, Garence said. We make our own choices and decisions every moment of our lives. Exactly. When you see 1111, it represents an awakening, and it carries the vibration of that divine is alive within you, and you should be open to the potential that exists. What about the phases of the moon, the position of the sun and planets, the zodiac signs? Oof, that's a whole other book, Garence laughed. But I will leave you with one small tidbit on the moon, because it's a favorite of mine. The new moon symbolizes new beginnings, while the full moon represents closure. Exactamente. All right. You'll have to share the rest with me some other time. So your 33rd birthday is in 3 days, he said, leaning against her shoulder, hoping she appreciated his acknowledging the pattern her approaching birthday. You know, age doesn't mean a thing to me. Cheers, he said, appreciating another one of her views. What I'm trying to get at is that in 3 days, you'll be near Gray Glacier. I guess. Then I'll be hanging out a few days afterwards. But this entire trip is a gift to myself. Every bit of it is special. He watched as his words swept her attention away. The corner of her mouth turned up, but it was as if she was remembering something that didn't concern him. There was more to that look, just like there was more to the woman who had stolen his rock. And that's chapter 2 in my book, titled Story of My Life. I started writing this novel in 2017. And it all sparked by one scene. It was just a scene in my mind, in my imagination. So imagine you're watching a film and all you see is like the back of their character and where they're going. That's what I imagined in my mind. A man, it's nighttime, it's dark, and he's walking up a hill toward a park because there's nobody around. There's nobody in parks at night. And all I knew was that he wanted to kill himself. I didn't see his face. I didn't hear his voice. I didn't know where he was at. That's all I knew. And then that scene kind of just went away. So from there, I was kind of struck by this idea. Why would this man, this fictional character, want to kill himself? What drove him to that? Something happened. I wanted to know more about his story. So I started there, kind of just asking just that. Why? What happened? And I love stories. I'm a sucker for them. So Sabina was born. In all of my stories, I appreciate when characters are from different parts of the world, different cultures, different races, and that not all the characters, any of them, have to look just like me. I'm not writing about me, I'm writing a story. And so Garence is English. Sabina is from Spain. And since he's in England and there are so many different cultures right there, it's like a hub for like, it's so central to like everything close. Throughout this novel, there are characters from other parts of Europe speaking different languages. And you'll have one American and you'll meet her about a third of the book toward the end. And each character, the three main characters, Garence, Sabina, and the American named Shalise Bonner. This novel contains each of their points of view. You're not just in Garence's head, you're in each of their heads. You know what they're thinking. You are following their journey, each page at a time. And as you read each of their letters in this novel, and I will show you. Their typeset represents them to a T. It's a very unique story. It is a love story, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great listening to your excerpt. I'm excited about all your characters. I have a couple questions, but I want to let everyone know that if you have any questions or comments, feel free to raise your hand or write it in the Q&A. Annie, you have your hand raised, so I'm going to allow you to talk. You can unmute yourself now and ask or make a comment.
Hi, Valerie. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's awesome for me to hear an author who's been successful in publishing. My question to you is, how did you get published? I mean, I understand you belong to a couple of book clubs, but how did you actually, what is the process that you went through?
I self-published this novel. On myself. Yes, I did. And in order to do that, I hired several editors. I started with a developmental editor. I did the best I possibly could with this novel and listening to the characters tell me their story. But I knew that there was still something more that I could do. It still wasn't meeting my standards. I felt strongly about the story that I wanted to publish this one. I wanted my first. And I knew some outside feedback professionals would be able to spot what I couldn't see because I was too close to the project. And so I asked for references. I started with New York Times bestselling author Dorinda Jones and her group, and she recommended some developmental editors for my genre specifically, which is upmarket fiction. And just as a side, upmarket fiction's the sliver in between literary fiction and commercial fiction, because it contains internal conflict and external conflict. And from there, I worked with the developmental editor to kind of really dig deeper into the story, into the characters that I didn't believe was possible, but she was wonderful, and her name was Kyra Nelson. And then the next process toward publishing, as I learned, because this is my first go around. And so I had to learn all this on my own, and just learning that there are different levels of editing versus if I was traditionally published and I had an agent, they would have their own team checking all this stuff. And I don't know how much I would have been involved in that process, but since it was all on me to kind of champion Garence and his story, the next edit was to find a copy editor, and that I went by referral as well. And then, gosh, hired a book cover designer as well. I went through, you may or may not be familiar with them, but the website, and they also help authors with information, but Reedsy, REEDSY, they have another platform within their website where you can hire other artists. So the different levels of editors and the person who's going to design the interior pages. And so I went through them to kind of get a really broad scope of resources for who could design the book cover. And the woman that I hired, as I spoke about earlier, is Dominique Dragoon. And oh man, I was impressed by her samples and what she had on her website to share with everybody. And of course, she had positive reviews, so that was important as well. And of course, I gave her the premise of the book, gave her a quick rundown of the three main characters, and above all, what was important to me was, because as I was writing it, I didn't imagine the book cover because I'm just focused on the characters and what they're going through, what are they thinking, what are they feeling. But the only thing that I did imagine as far as design was the pages, the letters. As I was writing this book, whether it was on paper or on my laptop, the one thing I did imagine, besides the scenes, was the letters. I told her, I was like, as best as we can, because I didn't know what that involved, as best as we can, if we can get the letters to be in their handwriting, that's what I envisioned. If we can do that, that would be amazing. And in the present day, while Garence is packing away and writing that one last letter, I said, it's also in a different penmanship because, as you'll read, his hand is broken. So I need 4 different typesets. The present day where his hand is broken, his handwriting from 5 years ago up until the present day, Sabina and Shalise. So if you can work with me on that, that'd be awesome. She said, oh yeah, that would be easy. She had like 3 or 4 different ideas. And I was like, oh my gosh. One of them, she even suggested for her to write each letter herself. I was like, no, that's like too much work. I can't ask you to do that because there's a lot of letters in here. Thank you, but I'm not gonna ask you to do that. But I think just a font would be easier. And so I'm kind of jumping ahead, but typeset. So I hired her as a book cover designer, but she held both skill sets as the book cover designer and the typesetter. And otherwise I would have to hire someone else, but she held both, and she was confident that she could bring this story to life in the pages for you all. And so she gave me 8 different covers to choose from. And the one I chose was, hope you can see it without the glare. It has like, let me see, it has circles on the book cover. You can see it.
Yeah.
And those came from her actually reading the book. As I was researching other book cover designers, it just sounded really quick and easy. Like they would design the book just based on my description, a quick synopsis of the book, high level, that they would design what's supposed to represent the whole book. But Dominique said that she would read the book, and her enthusiasm and just her championing my ideas and saying that this is actually a book that she would read. She really wanted to work with me. And so that made me feel great. Like, who doesn't want that kind of energy on your team? But when she then said, I'm going to read your book, blew my mind. Because then she's really going to capture what the book is about, because she's read every page and she's going to know or have a better understanding of what those letters should look like, because she's read them all. She's in the character's head. She's seeing and experiencing and feeling those external, conflicts and things kind of going on. I was like, you're hired. And and she could do both jobs, the cover, the design, and the interior pages. Like, yes, I won the lottery with Dominique. So yeah, then after her, she got everything designed and set for me as best we could in that stage of the whole publishing process. And that's another thing that I really loved or enjoyed and appreciated being an independent author, is that I got a say in everything, on the cover, the color, the font. Like, of course she designed it all, but I got to tell her, like, yes, no, lighter, darker, more this, replace this little picture with something else, very politely, of course. But I mean, like, I got that involvement with her. And the interior pages, I was involved in all of that. Whereas if I was traditionally published, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have been that fortunate. And based on other novels that I've read, New York Times bestselling authors, when characters are writing their journal or their diaries or their love letters or whatever, those letters are all in italics. For all the characters, it's just in italics. It's very straightforward and easy to read. Fabulous. But I wanted something extra for Garence and his story. And Dominique could deliver. And so being an indie author, I got to push that through. And then I had to hire I went through Reedsy as well for the next, I'll call them artists because we're all artists. And that was a proofreader to go through the electronic version of the book in ebook format, because I did ebook and paperback format. So the proofreader, Sarah Magnus, went through both formats. She read the book, and her job was to make sure that everything flowed, that the pages ended just right. And of course, Dominique isn't a designer, but as a proofreader, she was like the final polish, make sure everything was in line and looked good. And then the super cool thing about Sarah Magnus is that she's English. I hired an English woman because since Garence is English, I'm an American. I don't know all those cool, funky British phrases. I did the best I could because I love English culture, and that's why Garence is English. But I did the best I could with what I know. And when I started this novel, I was already binging a couple of English programming. So, and they were like modern day programs. So I was able to like catch on stuff and like research, but I knew I didn't catch everything. So hiring an English proofreader, she went through the whole thing, and she even asked me, do you want American phrasing on this and that, American punctuation or British? And I was like, I knew my audience would be predominantly English or American. And I said, nope, keep American spelling and punctuation, but keep the British phrasing. Like, take out all your Americanisms, except for Shalise, because she's the only American. So, but everyone else, scrub it out. And so she did. So final touch, and then gave that file back to Dominique to upload it. And so that was the whole process. That was a long answer, sorry. But that was the whole process of publishing this book, and also little perks about being an indie author, just how much I was involved. Thanks
Thank
for
you
your
so
question.
much. No, it's an excellent answer, and I really appreciate it. It's a little daunting. I'm kind of an older generation, I think, than you are, and perhaps my initial thinking goes back to old school publishers, and like with Louisa May Alcott walking into the publishing firm that was all male, and she didn't know where to go with it. So I appreciate that.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
Much.
Thank you for sharing all of that. It's fascinating.
You're welcome.
Learn all of this process. So you've been writing for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
maybe your lifetime, I don't know. What inspired you to finally do it, like publish your novel? What was it that pushed you to go this direction?
I chose this story to be my first publication because of Garence and his story and how passionate I was about telling it. It is fiction, but everything within it is very real. It is based on real emotions between the characters, Garence and Sabina. Those feelings and everything they go through in their relationship are real events. It's not fluff. Just to kind of give you a little bit, but not too much. As a married couple, they want to have a family, and it's not as easy as they hoped. So those are the challenges that they have to overcome together multiple times. Because I learned that it's not uncommon, but that it's also less heard of, or less, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but at least in stories, it's not as much told when couples continuously have trouble. It's not shown so much. And I learned that it's not uncommon for couples to have as much trouble as Garence and Sabina did. So I wanted to explore that. And then there's, so we know Sabina died. So then he has to deal with, so I'm not giving anything away there. Because in chapter 1, you learn that. This was the love of his life, the person he was going to spend the rest of his life with. And he fell into depression. So you go in through those events with him as well. It's not fluff. It's not all doom and gloom either, but I'm saying it's all real. And it's all because of how much he loved her. And that's why this is a love story.
Do you put, I mean, you just said this isn't fluff, this is maybe based on true things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you put yourself into each character, or do you base characters on people you know in real life? And then the next question is, who's your favorite character to write about?
Yes, I did put myself into these characters' shoes, especially when I hadn't experienced them. Whatever they were going through in that moment. So whether it was Garence wanting to kill himself, or Sabina losing a child, or Garence losing his spouse, and then the other things that you'll read about. I am an empath myself. I feel other people's feelings, what they're going through. I don't have to know I don't have to like live those experiences, but if we're having a conversation and you're telling me your story, I'm going to feel what you're feeling. And so just based on that, knowing what the characters were going through, I just put myself in their shoes and just imagine like, oh my God, I just lost somebody in this situation, like the different situation that it occurred in, and knowing how much these characters meant to each other, I just put that into focus and then tried my hardest to put that into the book so that way you would go along with the journey as well and know what Sabina was going through, what Garence was going through, seeing his partner, troubled, and vice versa. So you're not just getting one character's point of view. It was important to me that the reader went on this journey with each character. So yes, I put myself in their shoes. Yeah, especially all the good and the bad when they're falling in love and everything. And yeah, my favorite character to write about. there's three main characters, and there's like a fourth character, is like a sub character. That's Garence's psychologist. She's Austrian and she really kicks his butt. But gosh, all four of them, they're all so different. You'll read the book and they are all so different from each other. My favorite. Do I have to admit this? But no, it's okay. My favorite character to write about was Sabina. I loved her energy. Man, she was so alive and feisty and so emotional. She's so intense. And I really had fun stepping into her shoes and whipping Garence around. But yeah, she was pretty awesome.
Thank you. All right, I have a couple more questions, but I want to remind everyone, if you want to make a comment or ask a question, feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat box. So what is the main advice you would give someone who wants to write their own novel and wants to publish? What are some of the biggest things you've learned in this process, and what advice would you give to novice writers?
Oh, man. Always follow your inspiration and your intuition. Don't force anything, and listen to your characters tell you their story. I'm basically just transcribing what they're saying, but listen to them. They will tell you their story. You'll feel it. And if you get stuck, just set it aside. Don't stress over it. It's not so much writer's block, just it's not there yet. Move on to something else in the book or whatever your process is. And just keep that in the back of your mind, whatever you need, scene, the paragraph, the chapter, whatever you're trying to work on. Just ask yourself, like, as an example, like, why would someone want to kill themselves? This character in particular, not anybody, but this character. And then just let it go. And then when you least expect it, the answers come to you. So just keep following that and stay true to yourself.
Always good advice.
Mm-hmm.
For yourself and your vision. Thank you. So this is always an awkward question for authors after you just published this, you basically just gave birth to this baby. But what is next? You've been working on this for a while, since 2017.
Yeah.
Finally published, it's finally realized.
I know.
What's next for Valerie Baeza?
Next is I've started my next novel. I'm going to stay in the upmarket fiction genre. I like the internal and the external conflict. That's a lot of fun. It's a really good challenge, and I like being challenged. So starting all over, that'll be the thing, because I've started over in 2017. So 4 years ago, like to go down that road again, knowing how much effort I put into this, like, it's like going on another hike. It's like, wow, I'm going to do it again. Like, I want to climb that peak, but man, I need some new gear. And I'm up for it. And yeah, I'm working on the next one. It'll be based here in New Mexico. And of course, love story, because like I said, I love everything love story. So it's about the female is a songwriter, and the gentleman haven't quite figured out his profession, but it's sort of a long distance relationship, but it'll be based out of Albuquerque.
Awesome, I can't wait.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, if no one has any other questions or comments, I just want to thank you all again for being here this evening with us. And a million times thank you to Valerie for providing this program and sharing your novel with us and the world. Yeah, You can find Valerie Baeza's books to purchase by requesting them at local bookstores, as well as it's available on many online vendors. Just look up Valerie Baeza, Story of My Life, you'll find it.
Mm.
You can learn more about Valerie Baeza on her website or by following her social media that you'll see there, links in the chat. She has her website, valeriebaezaauthor.com. You're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Anything else you want to plug before we say goodbye and good night?
Only thank you, Jessica and Santa Fe Public Library. And thank you to all of our attendees. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. You stay safe, read books, read Valerie Baeza's Story of My Life, and write your own novel.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.